Hello, I'm Dr. Katie. I am a child and adolescent and young adult psychotherapist. I've been in the field for 28 years. I'm a VP of Community Initiatives for the Jed Foundation, which is a nonprofit that protects the mental health of and prevents suicide for teens and young adults. And I've been working with young people for my entire life. I do a lot of work with girls. I've done a lot of research into girls. My book, No More Mean Girls, came out in 2018. And almost immediately after that book came out, my inbox was flooded with "What about the boys?" which is an excellent question. And so that led me to reading everything I could get my hands on, every piece of scholarly research and every report out there about boys and young men and mental health. And that's where Breaking the Boy Code came from. I'm an advocate for youth, regardless of gender identity, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. So I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about your entry point into the field of mental health.
I think there's good and bad news. And one thing that's good right now is that people know more about mental health than they ever have. There's still a lot more to know, but I feel like we've reached a place where more people, at least are aware of the words mental health and that there are people out there who can help with mental health. That's not to say that stigma is gone. It still exists. But when I decided I wanted to enter this field, I was 16 years old. And part of the reason I made that decision is because one of my best friends in high school was really struggling with her mental health. At the same time, I struggled with my mental health, but didn't know. So my parents didn't know enough to know that when I was walking around feeling like I had a lump in my throat, that was actually a manifestation of anxiety, or that when I had like a few weeks senior year in high school where I just like couldn't get myself out of bed and I was really struggling to show up to school, that was depression. Hindsight being what it is, we're going back like, oh, if we had known this, we could have done things, we could have talked about it, we could have done things so differently, but we were all sort of quietly suffering and trying to find our way through this world that didn't meet that moment for young people. So, I announced when I was 16 that I wanted to be a therapist for teens, and my parents were like, great, how about nursing? like, is that a thing, therapist for teens? And to be honest, it really wasn't. There were therapists for adults, but there was not a lot of training on adolescent psychotherapy and adolescent psychiatry at the time. There was some, but not a lot. So, so that was sort of my entry point, and I went off to Boston College and had incredible mentors there in the psychology department, and kind of helped me find my way to my MSW and all that stuff. In the meantime, when I was at the midway point of my MSW program, almost exactly, my father died by suicide, like out of the blue. And so that was a wake-up call. I mean, for a variety of reasons, and obviously a trauma that my family endured. But we really didn't know that he was suffering to the degree that he was. And when my mom and I primarily were in charge of putting the pieces together, my brother was living in Chicago at the time. My older sister was out in LA in law school. So they were sort of adults already. And I was like in the middle. And then my little sister was just about to graduate high school. And so my mom and I were kind of putting together the pieces, cleaning out the house, going through the things. And we were like, oh, that's why he did this. And that's why he did that. Like, he had cleaned out his entire closet, about a month before he died. And my mom was like, what are you doing? Jim, what are you doing? Why are you getting rid of all your clothes? And he was like, they're never going to fit again. They're out of style. I just, I don't need them anymore. And she was like, okay, it just seems like maybe you want to save some of it. You don't know, and he just was adamant. He literally emptied his closet, and she thought it was odd. But also, like, it's not odd enough to be like, there's something really wrong with you, because he's getting up, he's going to work every day, he's, doing his job, he's there for Easter, he's there for, we're like, he's acting like a regular person. So that was kind of very eye-opening when we kind of went back in hindsight, like, oh, dad did this. And remember when he said this weird thing out of the blue, and remember this, and he, was giving us weird little instructions about different things. And he would make comments about like, oh, if I ever died, mom needs to do A, B, and C. And we were like, stop. He knew that he was struggling and we didn't. But you go back in hindsight and you see it and you're like, Oh, if I had known that all of these little things that almost were invisible, really hard to spot, were actually him preparing us, him knowing that his life was coming to an end. We could have intervened. We could have gotten him help. We could have done something. Now, it's like you can't go back and say that because you only know what you know, and we weren't inside his brain at the time. But when that happened, I immediately said to myself, I have to do something in the suicide prevention field, which was not a field at the time. It was like emerging research, but I have to get involved in this at some point in my life because people can't have this experience. It's terrible. It's terrible for kids, even when they're almost adults. It's terrible for young children. It's terrible for everybody. So I have to someday find my way to that place, which is why I ended up at the Jed Foundation later. But I have spent years working with young people and learning how to, beyond my master's, beyond my PhD, I did a lot of learning in terms of like, how do you talk to somebody about suicide? How do you ask the hard questions as a clinician, but also as a friend or family member to make sure that your people are okay? How do you teach other people to do that? That's just become like the fabric of who I am because I believe that we can help people if we learn how to talk about these hard things. And with male mental health, we have to go the extra mile because they're not taught to talk about these things. By and large, even now in 2026, young female identifying children and young adults are conditioned to talk about how things feel and how they can help. And young boys and young male identifying children are taught to be productive, to earn, and to solve problems.
I'm just wondering, like, what are those scripts you help people with, and how do you help people ask those hard questions? I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, like, how do you help people have hard conversations? You're a clinician, but as a mom, as a friend.
Yeah. Well, I always say the first step is building your own comfort level with talking about hard things. And so this sounds like really silly, but it actually really works. Like talk to yourself in the mirror, pretend that your reflection is someone else and start saying things like, are you thinking about suicide? Are you wanting to die? Are you having feelings of wanting to die? Because those are the questions we need to ask. We need to be able to say that to our own children, to other people's children, to people in our lives. If we suspect that someone is suicidal, we have to ask very direct questions. We have to be able to say, are you thinking of how you want to die? Which is a terrible question to ask another human. That's a terrible question, and nobody wants the answer, but we have to ask those questions. There's still so many people that believe that if you talk about this stuff, it plants ideas in people's heads. That is not true. Talking about means, talking about where and how people die, that plants ideas and can lead to contagion. Asking people if they're in that mindset where they're thinking that they want to die is life-saving, because when we can get that answer, we can get help for people.
Tell me the distinction. You just did a great distinction. So planting versus asking. Can you just break that down? Like give me an example of what that would look like? Like
Yeah.
almost like a do and a don't.
Right. So when we talk about safe messaging for suicide prevention, and Jed does a lot of this work, and so does AFSP and all the other suicide prevention resource center, all the other orgs that kind of work on this stuff. But we talk a lot about not discussing hotspots, areas where people have died by suicide, not talking about the ways in which people die by suicide, never identifying that in print or in interview, just not talking about the ways. That's what we call means. If you hear somebody saying we're trying to reduce access to lethal means is the method, the way that somebody would die. We don't want to talk about those things because those, talking about that level of detail can glorify it and can also make it seem like reasonable, which, if you're in a healthy place with your mental health, you're thinking there's no way that anyone would ever think that sounds reasonable. But when you're not in a healthy place and when you do feel alone, that's ideas, right? That's planting ideas. Asking questions about how you're doing with your mental health very directly and asking, are you feeling like you want to die by suicide? Are you thinking about suicide? That's asking a direct assessment question. where you can get a yes or no answer. And I always say, even if you get the no answer, well, then how is your mental health really?
Right.
What are you really feeling? Are you having a hard time getting out of bed? Are you having a hard time getting yourself to work or school? Are you avoiding hanging out with your friends or talking to people? Because those are all indicators that somebody really needs more help than they're getting.
Right. When you say that you were looking back, your mom, and you were looking back at your dad and seeing these things like cleaning up the closet, or you should be able to do this. So many people aren't trained in recognizing signs. Another thing you said that I really liked is if someone says they're fine, they're usually not fine. But are there signs, especially with boys and men, that you can look out for?
What I always say, and if anyone is listening has lost someone by suicide like I have, you know, you can Google the red flags and you'll get a body of research, or you'll get a billion blog posts that tell you, this, and this, but don't say to yourself, I should have seen that. Because what I say is, I wish we didn't call them red flags, because most of the time they're like pink and tattered and barely flying. And so they're very nuanced and almost, like I said earlier, almost silent flags, right? So, one conversation out of context 2 months before, it's like you kind of think like, well, old people are weird, like, like why do people talk like this when they get to be in their 50s, right? When you're a kid, that's what you're thinking. Um,
Yeah.
so, the flags are not always clear, but however, and especially with boys and men, what I say is always think about baseline. So who is this person usually, right? Who do you know this person to be, and how do they operate in the world? Are they very social or are they not? Some people are not very social. So saying like social withdrawal, that wouldn't be a sign, because they're not social people. But a social person who suddenly doesn't want to interact with anybody and is keeping to themselves and is kind of hiding out, well, then that is an indicator that something isn't right. Um, for men and boys in particular, we see that depression manifests differently. And so often there's more anger and irritability and just like an overall discomfort versus like if you look it up in the DSM or if you're watching movies, depression is always sad and sleeping all the time, and and that can be true, but sometimes for boys and men it's like not being able to sleep, right? It's like insomnia, terrible insomnia at night. It's this irritability, this anger, this frustration, this feeling of nothing's ever going right. So instead of like looking for to check certain boxes, like think of the overall arc of like, what are the behavioral changes that you're seeing in this person? What feels really different about the way that they are interacting with the world around them? And then, go from there and think like, maybe this person could need help. I mean, I am biased as a clinician, as a therapist of 28 years, but I think therapy is good for everyone. And I go to therapy. So
Yeah.
I think the earlier you go and you find a person who can listen to you, even if they're only listening and providing a couple things here and there, but having that trusted resource is essential. If there are barriers that are hard to overcome, then finding a trusted person in your social circle that you can talk to. We also know that males in particular tend to prefer informal group settings for talking about things. Finding ways to get people together to be able to just talk informally can also be helpful. But the sooner make those connections for support, the better. Boys do not maybe know how to talk about feelings, and they want to talk about feelings in a different way. I have a son and a daughter, as you know, so I have a 19-year-old
Yeah.
daughter and a 17-year-old son. I love my daughter to pieces, but boy, can that one yap at 11 p.m., right? The daily download of all the things that I'm like, mom's old and going to bed. Do you want to wake up early and we can do this in the morning? But, so we have to find our times, right? That's not how my son is going to tell me things, but that doesn't mean he's not going to tell me things. So with him, we're playing games. We play bananagrams a lot. We play Scrabble. We do crossword puzzles together. Like, we're doers, right? Research shows that this is true of male identifying people, that they're more likely to talk when they are doing. And so peppering your kid with questions while they're in the back of the car on the way home from school, no, none of them. You know what? None of them across the gender spectrum want you to do this. stop
Hard
doing
no.
this. They don't want it. They don't like it. And every parent thinks, oh, they love it. No, they don't. They don't love it. They
Turns
come to
out.
me and tell me how much they don't love it. The amount of requests like, Katie, can you please tell my parents to stop doing this? I just want to chill. So find your connection points. Shooting hoops, kicking a soccer ball, throwing a football, if they're not sporty, doing art together, doing music together. Make shared playlists as your connection starting point for having conversations. Oh, what do you think about when you think of this song? Why do you like that? Oh, this is why I like this one. Why do you like that? Well, like find your shared connections. Go for walks. Walk the pet if you have one. If you don't have one, just walk yourselves.
Yeah.
Go out for ice cream or matcha or whatever they're doing now. Find your ways of doing and talk while doing and keep it informal. So not like, oh, what feelings did you have today? No, but they don't like that. And they're going to laugh at you.
Right.
But, just like, oh, hey, I know you were studying really hard for that test. How was it? Was it like, all right? Was it frustrating? Like, how'd it go? Find your connection points and just talk casually, but keep going. So like, I think there's this sort of mindset sometimes of like, well, if they don't share an exact feeling at that time, then it's over. They don't want to talk about feelings. And that's just like not how conversations work. If you think about conversations you have with people you're close to, there's a warm-up period, right? And there's sort of a story share period where you go back and forth. And then maybe that's where the deeper stuff happens. So give your son that chance to have that same experience.
I love that. And this is a good segue into the work, the red pill work you did, and all the things you kind of found. And you talk a lot about the importance of talking about this hard stuff. So here we're talking about like just, playing games, casual, how are you feeling, the test, whatever. And that feels kind of like low stakes. And then this other stuff feels higher stakes. And I'm curious, like, how do you do that and have those direct questions like, are you thinking about suicide, but with the manosphere content, which is so prevalent?
Yeah. So the first thing is getting to know what it really means, because the manosphere is like a huge, sort of like high level out there concept for most people, as it should be, honestly. So like just understanding what it means and like what is happening and what is TRP, taking the red pill, and why are boys doing this. But it's what I say is micro conversations are great because you just little bits, right? You don't have to sit down and have these big talks, right? And you can do it in ways that like, so you're seeing it in the news. It's always in the news now, right? Like media has caught up to the manosphere and they want to talk about it all the time. I don't know if that's good or bad. Haven't decided yet, but at least people are more aware of, what can happen out there in the world, in the cyber world. But so what I would say is like with my own son, and he's older than yours, but with my own son, I'll say like, I'll be like, dude, what's up with clavicular? Have you heard of him? Like, mom.
That's amazing. That's a
people
great
only talk about him ironically, like he's a mess, right? So they know like who's a mess and who's not, if you hear language. So if you start to hear misogynistic language, like, or women belong at home, not working language, or, well, women don't really know much language, like, and it's cash, they're in there, right? They're either seeing the videos or they're hearing it at school from people who are watching a lot of the videos. So the trouble is it's everywhere now. The manosphere has left the web and come into classrooms all over America and all over the world. And it's happening. So we have to be able to talk about it. So like when we catch those negative thoughts coming out of their, mouths, right? Or hearing some of that kind of talk, the gut reaction is to be like, what? Like you said what? But that's not a good reaction, right? So I always say you have your first inside reaction and then you do your second outside reaction. So take a breath, step outside for a second, get your own brain straight, and then come back and like, hey, I think I heard you say, something about like girls don't really need to go to college. What is that? What are you talking about? Girls don't need to go to college? Or what did I hear you say that girls are making it harder for boys to get into college right now? Is that what I heard? Is that right? Like, is that a thing? Where did you hear this? So like come at it with curiosity, ask and gather information first to just to like, where is your own kid coming from? Like, what has he heard and what is he thinking? And then help him deconstruct it. So Well, let's think about that for a minute. So I'm mom. I went to college. I have a PhD. So like, why would I have gone all that way if I wasn't going to do something with it? Like, what would be, why would you think that that's not necessary for me in my career, in my position? Or like, is it necessary? Like, let's talk about why I think I needed to have that advanced degree. So just helping them break it apart and deconstruct it and like investigate so that they can see that like some of these catchphrases and thoughts they're hearing are not correct. The manosphere very much has a playbook, and the entry level is often not kids looking for the red pill. Okay. More often than not, they're looking for how to do their hair, how, like, what's the best deodorant? What are the best shampoos for guys, for teen guys? And I always say, like, we just don't have a world in which that exists. And now we have this generation of kids who are very like, I mean, I don't necessarily know that they need to be so into, the soaps and the face washes and all the things. Like, it's good to know how to care for your skin, but like,
Yeah.
there's a whole world in which we have a conversation about what this has done to 10-year-old girls. And that's a very different negative outcome than what boys are dealing with.
Yeah.
But we don't teach boys how to do this. Like I remember teaching my son, like age 11, like, hey, I'm going to have you use the same products I use because we all have sensitive skin in this house. And
Yeah.
I know that these things work and my skin doesn't break out from it. So here you go. And when you need more, you tell me. And if something's happening with your skin that you're like, I don't like this, you tell me because I'll help solve the problem and we'll go figure it out like what you need.
I
Most
love
families don't do that with boys, right? It's like, don't forget to wash your pits, right? It's like, we're glad if they take a shower.
right.
So we're
Right.
not thinking about like moisturizer and sunscreen and all that stuff that we maybe do think about with girls. And so they go online and they look for this information and they look for, there's a reason that all the boys looked like alpacas for a while with that hairdo. And then like now it's different, right? It's not quite an alpaca, but I don't really know what it is, but they all have the same haircut. So but girls do it too, but they're
Totally.
learning, they're learning online and they're going to find this information. So it starts out sort of benign. And these guys, they look through the camera right into their souls and are like, I get it. I was the awkward kid too. If you follow my 5 steps, you're going to ascend. You're going to be great. It's going to like, it'll change your whole life. You're going to have so many friends. You're going to have girls, that are following you around. It's going to be great. You're going to get straight A's, like they sell them this thing that it doesn't exist. Right. But they sell it to them and they make it sound so good and they make it seem like, I get you. I was a dork and look at me now. Like that is always the opening for these influencers. And then a few videos later, you're into, I'll buy my course pack. The course pack's going to be $599. Buy this, shampoo. They get a coupon code. They make money off that. So, I mean, they're literally making money off our sons' backs in a variety of different ways.
It's so
They're
gross.
It's so gross. They're teaching them to get rich quick is by gambling by way of sports betting or day trading, and they will give them codes and special. They get kickbacks for that. So they're selling them such an unhealthy life and they're making so much money off our boys and they do not care. So if you watched Louis Theroux's new documentary Inside the Manosphere, those influencers that he interviewed are like right top of the heap. I mean, they're so out there. It's wild. But what you need to know is that the ones your sons are interacting with are learning from them and they're climbing up using their playbook. And so it's just maybe a little bit watered down, but soon enough, they'll be in those spaces where, women should shut up. Women don't need jobs. Women need to be subservient. Women do whatever I tell them to do because look at me. That's only a few clicks away. And the way that the algorithm works is that it pushes them this content. It really does. And I've had conversations with some of the big, I won't call anybody out, but with some of the big platforms, especially when I was writing that CNN article and when I was like diving into the manosphere myself to see like what it was all about. And they were like, we're trying, like we're trying. And so that's why you're seeing all these different teen accounts and safeties popping up. They all have it now. Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, they've got, parental controls for these accounts and you should use them. You should 100% use them. If your kids are going online, you've got to use those new controls where you can have family control and you can have oversight, because otherwise the algorithm snowballs this information to them. And the more you see it, the more real it feels.
When you said you weren't sure how you felt about all the conversation around the manosphere, can you talk about what that means to you? Does it feel akin to the means conversation around suicide? Like there's too much focus on it?
No, it's not that there's too much focus. I think we're scaring parents, and I don't want to scare parents because I want them to know two important things, which is that one, by and large, most kids are not looking for that content. It's being fed to them by a system that is designed to work against them.
Okay.
That's the message kids need to get. It's the same with girls and eating disorder content. It
Yes.
is being spoon fed to them. It is designed to work against them, and it is designed to keep them coming back for more.
Right.
And that's the same with the manosphere content. So it's not that they're looking for it, because I think what's happening is parents are afraid now that they have these bad kids that are out there looking for this negative content, and they're not. They can get wrapped up in it, and they can start to internalize some of these belief systems. And when you hear it, you address it. Like when you see it happening, it's not your fault. Don't blame yourself. It's the fault of the platforms. 100%. Influencers plus platforms are causing this problem.
Right.
I think influencer culture needs to go away across the board, because not only does it cause problems here, but with bunk science. Right now there's very much an influencer culture against therapy and clinicians, and we can trace that right back to conservative thought leaders, and it's just very, like, it's dangerous. We're telling people to do the wrong things and not to do things that can help them, and the manosphere is a big part of that. So there's that. And not every kid ends up down the red pill pipeline. So if you notice and your kid's like, hey, I'm really trying to find this one specific shampoo, assume they learned it online, right? Just make that assumption and go like, oh, okay, cool. Who taught you about this? Maybe I can Google it and figure out where to get it. And then once you know that they're engaging with that, well, what else are you learning? What kinds of tips are you looking for? And really engage with it and check in on it and be a partner to your kid, because that's the way that you keep them grounded in your family values and in the reality, right?
Right.
It's the same with AI. Kids are turning to chatbots for mental health help if they feel like they can't ask for it at home or can't get it at school or can't get it anywhere. They're going to do it because it's there now and it's available. And right now it's designed to be very sycophantic and very much agreeable and pleasing to the user. And so that's not therapeutic.
So it seems like what I'm getting from you is that if parents can take their panic and fear, which is really right there, and learn how to regulate themselves, then they can lead with more curiosity and less panic. But leading with the panic's not going to help. Am I getting that correctly? Like that?
Okay. Regulate before react. That's
so I love
advice.
that. So along those lines, how would you recommend, obviously, there are lots of places you could Google or whatever, how to regulate, but how do you recommend, you said the mirror technique of looking in the mirror and practicing conversations. Do you have any other tips for parents who might be in a full-blown panic about whatever, and how to kind of deal with that so they can talk about porn, or they can talk about suicide, or they can talk about the manosphere?
Yeah. So first, I always recommend the Calm app because I just feel like they have something for everyone.
Oh, I
and
love that.
use it when you are calm. Don't wait until you're completely dysregulated and out of your mind before you start using the Calm app. Use it now. Fix me. It's too late if you're yelling at the Calm app. But so use that. Get into the habit of using that, just because it teaches you how to regulate your breathing, how to slow your nervous system down. Whether you're listening to a sleep story at night, whether you're listening to, doing a morning meditation, or any of the, if you're an athlete, you can listen to LeBron James tell you about what great of a job you're doing. It's great. But, so a funny story about me is that I always call myself the queen of deep breathing because I just do it all the time. Right. And, so when I was at my most recent doctor's appointment, I just, doing my thing, deep breathing away, looking out the window, and they're like, your blood pressure is so low. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's normal. And they're like, no, like it's real low. And I'm like, no, I know it's normal. I mean, you can take it again, but that's normal. I said, it's because I'm the deep breathing queen. I just keep myself nice and regulated. They're like, wow. And so every time they're like, wow, your blood, are you dizzy? And I'm like, no, I'm not dizzy. This is just me. This is who I am. So, but practice, practice, practice. It took years for me to get to that place.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
do that. Use the Calm app, practice, learn how to really slow yourself down so that you can think through things. And then I always say, have your person that you can say anything to completely unfiltered. So like I can call my big sister at any hour of the day and say like, oh my God, porn. And she'll be like, yes, let's talk about it. Right. So you need that person on the other end of the line, not text, but like voices, right? You need to hear voices where you can be like, OMG, blah, blah, blah. And like,
Yeah,
they'll be like, yeah, let's talk about that now.
I'm
Um,
here. I'm for it. Yeah,
because you get it out, right? Like you get to vent it out. And then you have someone who's like, yeah, I get it. I have a son. I hate this too. This freaks me out. What are we doing? Right. So like
right.
connect with people around it. Most people are freaking out about this if they have a son of any age. So talk about it with people, open the conversation. Don't be afraid. Like someone's got to start it. It's always me because I'm comfortable talking about things, but someone has to start it. And once you start it, you can talk about it. If you can
Right.
name it, you can tame it. So says Dr. Tina Payne Bryson. And I love that
Yes.
advice.
I love that too. Or Mr. Rogers, right? Anything that's
Yeah,
human is mentionable, anything that's mentionable is manageable. So I
that's
love
right.
that
Yep.
so much. Thank you so, so much.